Maybe everybody could find their seat, please. Thank you. So first of all, I'd like to welcome you all to our first in-person Yom Hashoah commemoration since COVID. I would like to ask you all to please turn off your cell phones and please refrain from applauding during the ceremony. Thank you.
Elie Wiesel said, "The question is not why all the Jews did not fight, but how so many of them did. Tormented, beaten, starved, where did they find the strength, spiritual and physical, to resist?"
A good Abend. Je m'appelle Doris Steg. Je suis fille de survivants et coprésidente de la commémoration de Shoah Vehagvurah ce soir, en compagnie de Ruth Najman, qui est également fille de survivants.
Listening to our parents' stories of survival made us understand that everyday acts of living were in fact acts of resistance. Resistance is often associated with arms, such as the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising or sabotage in munitions factories. However, history teaches us that resistance appeared in many forms: stealing potatoes, observing Jewish holidays, continuing Jewish education, and clandestinely maintaining Jewish arts and culture, and keeping records, diaries, photos in secret for the world to know.
Tonight, we welcome professor and author Dr. Frank Chalk, who is well known for his expertise in the areas of genocide and Holocaust studies. He is founding co-director and research director of the Montreal Institute for Genocide and Human Rights Studies at Concordia University. He also serves on the Montreal Holocaust Museum's steering committee, which is overseeing the design of the new downtown museum. He will speak to us about the many forms of resistance.
Les photos présentées permettront de mettre des visages et des noms sur ces héros qui ont accompli des actes de bravoure. Certaines de ces personnes sont connues au niveau international et d'autres sont liées à la communauté juive de Montréal.
Our video documentary is based on life stories of several Canadian survivors reflecting our theme. Some of them will participate with lighting candles in memory of the 6 million who were killed.
Le premier morceau de musique, Vidouille, est interprété ce soir par Bertha Rosenol et Louis Greenhouse. Il s'agit du premier mouvement de Baal Shem, 3 tableaux de la vie hassidique composés par Ernest Bloch, un Américain d'origine suisse, soucieux d'exprimer sa judéité en musique.
The second classical piece, Melody, was composed by Erwin Schulhoff when he was only 9 years old, an Austro-Czech Jewish pianist who was persecuted in the 30s since his music was considered degenerate by the Nazis. He was blacklisted and ultimately died in prison in 1942.
Resistance remains forever important in our climate of increasing anti-Semitism. We cannot remain complacent with the tide of events, but must continue to be vigilant in bringing these acts to the attention of the public, media, government, educational institutions, while supporting human rights organizations that combat anti-Semitism.
Le Musée de l'Holocauste Montréal, institution au rayonnement mondial, a pour mission de sensibiliser le public au danger universel de l'antisémitisme, du racisme et de la haine et l'indifférence.
We can take pride in our community, our leaders, and our government, who put the needs of remembrance and understanding the legacy of the Holocaust at the forefront. I would like to introduce the Honorable Jacques Saada, President of the Board of Directors of the Montreal Holocaust Museum.
Thank you, Ruth and Doris. Monsieur le ministre Benoît Charette, ministre de l'Environnement, de la lutte contre les changements climatiques, de la faune et des parcs, merci d'avoir fait le voyage spécifiquement de Québec et d'y retourner ce soir pour être avec nous ici. Madame Pascale Derry, ministre de l'Enseignement supérieur, qui fait notre fierté à nous, et c'est peut-être pas le temps de dire pourquoi, mais elle le sait. Monsieur Christopher Skiri, qui est le ministre délégué à l'économie, ministre responsable de la lutte contre le racisme. Merci de votre présence. Mesdames et messieurs les membres du corps consulaire et diplomatique de République fédérale d'Allemagne, d'Autriche, de Belgique, de France, de Hongrie, d'Israël, du Maroc, des Pays-Bas, de Pologne et du Portugal. Distingués membres de l'Assemblée nationale du Québec, en particulier, je me permettrai de souligner la présence d'Elisabeth Pras, chez qui nous sommes, c'est elle qui nous accueille ici. Messieurs les maires de Côte-Saint-Luc, d'Outremont, de Hampstead, mesdames et messieurs les membres des conseils municipaux, monsieur Joel Siegel, je ne sais pas s'il est ici, oui, monsieur Joel Siegel, le président de la fédération CGE, Mr. President Joshua Orzek, Rabbi Zoli Clement, and all of you, my dear friends. Let me say first how humbled I am to share this essential moment with you as president of the Montreal Holocaust Museum. This year's Yom Hashoah Vehagvurah coincides with the 80th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, the largest Jewish uprising during the Holocaust. Men, women, and even children who knew that victory was impossible, who knew that survival was unlikely, still decided to fight back against the unspeakable. Their courage will continue to inspire us for generations to come. Survivors epitomize the resilience and determination of the Jewish people. At the Montreal Holocaust Museum, it is our privilege and honor to carry out the legacy of our survivor founders who rebuilt their lives and families in the city. Ils ont pensé ce musée à la fois pour se souvenir et pour prévenir. Se souvenir dans une tristesse indissoluble. Ces millions de vies que le nazisme nous a volées. 6 millions de Juifs exterminés. C'est 6 millions de fois une vie, avec pour chacune d'elles des rêves, des espoirs, des moments de tendresse. 6 millions d'êtres humains impuissants et incrédules, éliminés dans la désespérance. Le souvenir de 6 millions d'êtres humains que d'autres voudraient effacer encore une fois, avec les mêmes prétextes, la même haine, la même virulence, la même inhumanité. Certains nous trouvent fatigants à force de nous répéter. Mais moi, je préfère me répéter plutôt que de ne plus exister. Ne plus parler de l'Holocauste, ce serait permettre au genre humain d'abdiquer. En nous vivent 6 millions de personnes. Nous portons les rêves qu'ils n'ont pas eu le temps de réaliser, les sensibilités dont ils vibraient. Leur silence ne doit jamais être assourdi. Le rabbin Cook disait « Je ne parle pas parce que j'ai la force de parler, je parle parce que je n'ai pas la force de garder le silence. » A museum for remembrance, but also for education. At the Montreal Holocaust Museum, we work with a remarkable group of survivors who volunteer their time to share the testimony and transmit the memory of the Shoah to visitors of all ages and backgrounds. Today and every day, we remember your loss, your resilience, and your outstanding contributions to Holocaust education. This evening, we are fortunate to welcome 7 Holocaust survivor candlelighters alongside their families and friends. Chava Petreanu, Armand Simbalista, Joseph Brody, Mila and Isidore Messner, Joni Jablon, and Perla Rosen. we thank you profoundly for your presence. As anti-Semitism, discrimination against minorities, and xenophobia persist today, we are reminded of the importance of Holocaust remembrance and education. When young people learn about the Shoah and the dangers of unchecked hatred, they undergo a transformative experience and are better equipped to identify prejudice and racism. When they learn about the stories of Jews who resisted persecution, taking up arms, preserving their culture, and maintaining their religious practices, they better understand the human capacity to resist anti-Semitism, hate, and injustice. When they learn about the stories of the righteous who are responsible for saving the lives of people like Mila Messner, Eva Cooper, and Fisher Golding, they understand our collective responsibility to intervene in the face of intolerance and discrimination. On behalf of the Montreal Holocaust Museum, I would like to thank you all for joining us this evening. Your presence conveys not only your commitment to Holocaust remembrance, but also your dedication to transmitting these lessons, stories, and obligations to a new generation. La meilleure façon de rendre hommage à votre présence ce soir, c'est de rappeler cette phrase si puissante d'André Malraux. La plus belle sépulture des morts, c'est la mémoire des vivants.
I would like to introduce the Consul General of Israel, Paul Hirschon, to say a few words.
Mes amis, presque 80 left Europe at the age of 9 years old on his own, traveled to Chicago, and found his way somehow to South Africa at age 14. At the beginning of the Second World War, in his early 40s, my grandfather, who I never met, arranged for his mother and his two sisters to leave Europe and travel to South Africa and take refuge. They got on a ship, they traveled to Cape Town, they arrived in Cape Town. Only there was one small problem. Turns out that the documents my grandfather had forged were not good enough. And the only memory that my father has of his grandmother and his two aunts is standing as a young teenager on the dock in Cape Town, waving goodbye as they were not allowed off the ship and sailed back to Europe, never to be heard of again. Presque 80 ans depuis la Shoah. Nous n'oublions pas aujourd'hui et pas dans notre 80 ans. Yehi Zichram Baruch.
La première bougie sera allumée par Hava Petrianu, survivante. Elle est accompagnée de Samuel Shox, membre de la troisième génération.
second candle will be lit by Armand Cimbalista, survivor, together with his wife Harriet Cimbalista, his children Louise and David Cimbalista, and his grandchildren Charlie and Evan Barrell, Nikki Jones, and Aaron Cimbalista.
La troisième bougie sera allumée par Joseph Brody, survivant. Il est accompagné de Eugène Feig, membre de la deuxième génération. I would like to introduce Dr. Frank Chalk, Emeritus Professor of History and co-founder of the Montreal Institute for Genocide and Human Rights Studies at Concordia University.
Bonsoir, c'est un grand plaisir d'être ici avec vous. En français, je suis l'interveneur principal. It's more elegant than keynote speaker in some ways. You can choose whichever you like. Please join me in considering the four-sided context of the unthinkable Holocaust, which boxed Jews into the Nazi trap from 1939 on. The brutality of the Nazi leaders and their genocidal goals were unprecedented in the modern European and North African Jewish experience. For the first time, the history of modern Western and Central Europe confronted a vicious anti-Semite who believed in annihilating the Jewish people, who had gained control of a modern state and its apparatus, which placed the full power of its police and military forces in his hands. Once forced into Nazi-organized ghettos, Jews suffered from rampant starvation, hunger, and disease created by deliberate Nazi policies. Just striving to stay alive by feeding one's family was an act of resistance and almost impossible. Sharing food with your children, parents, and friends while you were starving was a heroic act. Jews living under Nazi occupation had no place to escape, with very few exceptions. The anti-Semitism, indifference, greed, and crass opportunism of many members of the local Christian populations, especially in Eastern Europe, left many with no exit. Isolated from their Christian neighbors, most Jews living under Nazi occupation felt abandoned by their governments and by the world. The corruption riddling key Jewish ghetto regimes, including the ghetto police, when combined with the opposition to armed resistance of even the most progressive Jewish ghetto administrators, most of whom were intimidated by Nazi threats to kill every inmate of their ghetto, made revolt impractical in all but a very few cases. What were the instruments, the templates, which Jews looked to organize themselves, to go on, to survive? The first was Jewish history itself. Jews had survived civil war, conquest and persecution by the Assyrian, Byzantine, and Roman empires, by the Crusaders, the Inquisition, and the Cossacks, and occupation by the Germans in World War I, which seemed relatively benign. These were just a few of the challenges that we faced. These experiences dictated patience and fortitude to resist simply by surviving. The organizing initiatives of Zionist and communist youth organizations, frequently clandestine in Eastern Europe and divided into small cells of activists whenever possible, provided a model for organizing underground warfare against the German forces. Zionist youth from Vilna seized the initiative by audaciously blowing up a German train as it entered their ambush site. A communist cell, including Jews and Armenians, assassinated German officers at a cafe in German-occupied Paris. The example of Armenian resistance to Turkish genocide, described dramatically in Franz Werfel's best-selling novel, The 40 Days at Musa Dagh, provided a third template for resistance. First published in the year that Hitler came to power, 1933, it provided a powerful demonstration of civilians taking up arms to save their village from genocide, and if necessary, to die upholding the dignity and honor of their people. Let me turn now to the most neglected form of resistance, cultural and spiritual resistance, including education and inspiring the will to live with concerts, plays, debates, clandestine libraries, and the archive creating work for posterity of Oneg Shabbat, initiated by Emanuel Ringelblum. The Nazis not only aimed to murder the Jewish people, they also consciously waged campaigns to humiliate and degrade individual Jews wherever they lived, from ghettos to slave labor and concentration camps, and even in the death camps. Spiritual resistance began with fighting to sustain one's human dignity, autonomy, and human identity, asserting one's Jewish identity through prayer, celebrating Jewish festivals, and to the degree possible, following Jewish laws and traditions. These acts reminded many Jews of their people's rich history and contributions to civilization over the ages. And then there was armed resistance, which only a minority had the privilege of participating in. Armed resistance took enormous courage, and experience fighting in the Spanish Civil War and World War I helped. It included inciting and waging resistance by listening to BBC News on illegal radios, writing, smuggling, and disseminating messages and news sheets, sabotage, espionage, and intelligence gathering, assembling weapons, building bunkers and hideouts, operating clandestine shortwave radios, hiding enemies of the Nazis, forging life-saving identity papers and passes, building escape routes and guiding Jews and downed Allied flyers to safety. Yehuda Bauer and I have an ongoing discussion about whether we can learn any lessons from all of these experiences. I argue we can, and I'd like to conclude by sharing a few lessons briefly. We must not abandon the persecuted and isolated victims of human rights violators today. Think about the thousands of Afghan girls who the Taliban have denied high school education. We're working on that. We have plans to reach them and to help educate them, and you'll be hearing more about that in the future. Think about the people of Ukraine fighting Putin's Russian forces to maintain their independence and national identity. They are not the Ukrainians who hunted Jews. They are like the Ukrainians who fought in the Red Army and helped to defeat Hitler. And finally, think about the Rohingya of Burma under attack by the Burmese military, striving as best they can to restore democracy in Burma. Today, we must fight hard to educate Quebec high school and university students about the history of the Holocaust. This is the work of every generation. We can never rest and assume that we have achieved the final end state and that education will simply continue. Every generation needs to learn certain histories, and this is one of them. We have to fight Holocaust deniers and expose their lies, and prevent today's genocides as early as possible. Finally, let us work together to impress on Canada's and Quebec's political leaders and voters the principles of the responsibility to protect oppressed groups, to advance democracy and work from the bottom up and the top down to correct the practices at home and abroad which breed poverty, massive income gaps, and gross violations of human rights. And I'd like to conclude with just a sentence from the memoir of my family's relative, Hafka Folman Rabban of Lohamai Hagataot and elsewhere, who was arrested by the Gestapo in Krakow with her group of Jewish guerrilla fighters after they had attacked a group of German officers successfully, and discovered only after the war was over that one of the members of the group had a piece of paper in his pocket during the attack. He expected to be killed. And the words on that piece of paper were very simple. They said, "I am a Jew." Thank you very much.
Armen reich, alle gleich, da in die Dzielnice, acht Völker in a Stub oder in a finstere Piwnice, 5 Zlotes für a Breitel und kein Geld in die Stirnbeitel. Armen reich, alle gleich, da in die Dzielnice.
When I was 6 years old or 7 years old, I was starting school. There were no Jewish students. So my older brother told me, if you go to school, remember they're going to gang on you, okay? They're going to call you dirty Jews. I'm going to teach you how to fight, he said.
Je savais que je serais séparé avec ma mère. Alors ma mère m'a toujours dit, la première occasion, tu t'en vas, tu fous le camp, tu pars. Elle a décousu mon étoile. Toujours ma mère. C'est très important pour moi. Et quand les portes se sont ouvertes du Volodrome d'hiver, je me suis roué sur les gendarmes les plus proches qui étaient en cercle autour de nous. Je les ai bousculés. Ils m'ont couru derrière, mais à 17 ans, j'étais un gosse de la rue, comme je vous ai dit. Je courais très vite, j'étais fort, robuste, et je n'avais peur de rien. Ils m'ont couru derrière, ils sont partis.
People didn't lose their religion in the ghetto because it was the ghetto. During holidays, people organized a quorum, a minyan, where they davened together under the watchful eye of people that were standing outside, that they shouldn't be discovered, that they are having a minyan, that they're doing services.
The Germans came into the house, they started beating my mother, and I jumped on the German, me, boy, hey. He hit me here, I still have the scar here.
The amazing part of today's Einstein was that you had this cultural activity almost in any aspect of culture. We had famous painters, one of them survived, who recorded the horrible parts of the ghetto. Their paintings are renowned and are exhibited periodically. We had musicians there. They studied Requiem, the Battered Bride. They were performed times and times again, and starved people were rushing to be able to listen or attend debate circles. We were debating them philosophy of Kant to assets of Marxism, name it, it was discussed. Perhaps it was an escape mechanism, as not to think about the misery of the day. I don't know. Till today I can't explain it. While hungry, we're involved in that many aspects of culture.
There were groups, there were lectures, there were discussions. It was illegal, and it was underground, but it was going on.
And we are in the train, we are going to die. I am resigned, Lola is resigned, not Yasha. Yasha and there was another colleague there from my class, Oleg. They right away go to see how strong are the boards where the opening for air for the cattle was boarded off. How, if they can remove this, they were going to jump. It took Oleg and Yasha good few hours till they, with their hands, took off the boards, removed the boards. And it was late at night and decided who is jumping. Lola doesn't want to jump. Lola is going with my parents. And so I convinced her to jump. And my mother takes a handkerchief, tears these two stripes and ties our shoes. We should not lose them when we jump. So first is going Lola. Right after that, I go. And then Yasha.
Vous voyez, je n'étais pas un prophète, mais je voulais quand même que la guerre durât longtemps. Et j'étais sûr que la guerre va perdre, mais il fallait penser de sauver la tête. J'avais un gendarme qui, ma fille, était un ami de sa fille. Il était là. Et c'est lui qui m'a conduit dans la résistance. Nous n'habitons pas chez nous à la résistance. Nous étions dans le bois, ça s'appelait le bois de Troncé. Oui, on a travaillé 2 fois le train. Sur Montluçon, pas loin de Vichy justement. On a eu des contacts avec des juifs qui étaient aussi dans la résistance. On a mis des barrières sur la route de bois. On a tiré les cordes. Les Allemands sont passés, hein, ils sont tombés. Il y avait 4 personnes, on les a tous retrouvés.
We were taught how to use arms. We were taught how to take apart a gun, all kinds of guns. We were taught any kind of gun and how to put them together, how to take them apart.
L'ambulance m'a été donnée par le camp, par les Allemands, pour sauver les blessés, les malades, les crises d'appendicite, les maladies qu'on pouvait avoir dans un camp. Et tous les matins, il y avait 5-6 juifs près de l'ambulance. Je ne pouvais pas en prendre beaucoup. J'avais le laissez-passer allemand pour 2. Une partie, je le déposais dans la rue et une partie à l'hôpital. Et un jour, le commandant de l'hôpital m'a dit « Mademoiselle, vous nous apportez 3-4 fois par jour des malades qui ne sont même pas malades. Nous n'avons plus de place. Nous avons mis des matelas par terre. » C'est là que le docteur Brahmi m'a dit « Écoute Gisèle, il était tunisien, un juif. Écoute Gisèle, ce sont des hommes. Quand tu ouvres l'ambulance, au lieu de l'ouvrir à l'hôpital, ouvre-la sur les Champs-Élysées et laisse-les se promener et partir. Ils vont se débrouiller. Tu joues trop avec ta vie. » Et un jour, le commandant, il y en avait 17 dans l'ambulance. Mais non, j'étais me choquée, je crois, de prendre 17 personnes. Et l'obercommandante, il m'a dit, Gisèle, descendez de l'ambulance. Descendez. Ouvrez les portes. Ah, je dis, là, mon commandant, pas moi. Vous, comment moi? J'ai dit, ouvrez les portes. Aujourd'hui, c'est le typhus. Moi, je ne veux pas ouvrir. Il m'a regardé, il m'a dit, raus, c'est schnell. On a ouvert les portes et je suis partie.
Since we were all Jews there in that camp, and there were a lot of Orthodox people, and we even had a cantor that came there that was there from Warsaw, and he organized one service during the high holidays, a convittory service. He was the cantor, and he conducted the service. He formed a small choir, knowing that I can sing, and a few other fellows. We formed a choir, and we practiced, and we gave one service in that camp for the high holidays. It was very uplifting, not only for us, that we could do it, for all those that attended that service. Of course, we were 3 shifts that went to work, and only 2 shifts that knew about it came to listen to our service. We still, no matter how bad we had it, we still knew that we were Jews, and we still had our religion and our hopes.
The French Jews, well, they had a very different approach again to life. They were the ones that, when we got into the factory, taught us how to sabotage. We were to drill holes in some part that goes into a machine gun. These French Jewish women taught us to, if we do it very much to the side, it will not work. And since we're children, they will not suspect us nearly as much.
I said to my brother, if you have a chance, when we walk out again, in our way, it gets dark, if you have a chance, and we could see that people were dying on the roads, as soon as they rested, they were shot. I said to my brother, if you have a chance to escape, try it, because I'll try on my own. If we can, we don't have to escape together. Maybe one of us will save himself from certain death. Determination was there to survive, to see the downfall of this German might that was embracing all of Europe. We knew that it is inevitable, it will happen, but of course we didn't know whether we will live to see it happen. All those that still lived had hope to survive and see it. This gave us courage. This gave us a purpose to survive and to do whatever we could.
The 4th candle will be lit by survivors Mila and Isidore Mesner, accompanied by Amy Sue Silkoff, a member of the 3rd generation.
La cinquième bougie sera allumée par Johnny Jablon, survivant. Il est accompagné de sa famille Debbie Jablon et Jack et Daniel Weiner.
The sixth candle will be lit by Perla Rosen, together with her daughters Rima Rosen Palevsky and Florence Rosen Miller, and her granddaughters Marissa and Michelle Miller.
The promise. Will the third generation and all those who would like to join them please rise? If you can, we kindly ask you to remain standing for the rest of the program. Que tout le monde qui peut se lève et reste debout.
We promise to remind the world of El Malei Rachamim, Dayan Almanos Ve'avi Yisomim, Al Na Techeshevet Apak Ledami Yisrael, Shenishbach Kamayim. Hamtze Menucha Nechona Al Kanfei Ashchina, B'Ma'alos Kedoshim Etahorim, Kezor Harakia Meirim Umazhirim, Linishmosihem, Shel Rivavos, Alfei Yisrael, Anashim V'Nashim, Yiladim Vilados, Shenehergu, Shenishchatu, V'Shenisrefu, V'Nechneku, V'Nikbaru Chayim, Ba'aratzos Asher Naga'o Bahem Yad, Hatzorer HaGermani Ugrurav, Kulam, Kedoshim Utehorim, Began Eden Tehei, Menuchasam, Lachein, Bal Harachamim Yastireim, Beseser Kanafav, Leolamim, Vitzor Bitzor HaChayim Es Nishmasam, Adonai, Hu Nachalasam, V'yanuchu, B'shalom al Mishkavam, V'nomar, Amen.
Gadol v'skadosh merabo, v'omo divo cherusei v'yamim hachusei, v'chayechoin v'mechoin v'chayechol beis Yisrael, b'golos bankori v'imu amein. Yesh merabo mevoach l'olam l'ol meil mayom, yizborach v'yishtabach v'yizboach v'schomem v'stasei, v'yisado v'salev v'salol sh'mikosho b'richo, v'eilo mikol b'choso v'shiroso t'b'choso v'nechemoso, Damir de Alma vivu amen. Yesh l'Abraham Shemayo Chaim Tevi B'lei Dval Kol Yisrael vivu amen. V'yase shalom imroimo v'yase shalom aleinu v'al Kam Yisrael v'al Yosh. Amen.
Als du gehst den letzten Weg, verschimmenden Bleine verstellt Poetek. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Show, es wird abbeugt an unser Trott mir seinen Dorf. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Show, es wird abbeugt an unser Trott mir seinen Dorf. Palmenland bis weißen Land von Schnee. Wir krummen an mit unser Pein, mit unser Weh. Und wo gefallen ist, spritzt von unser Blut. Sprotzen wettert unser Gwurre, unser Mut. Und wo gefallen ist, spritzt von unser Blut. Sprotzen wettert unser Gwurre, unser Mut. Die Morgensonne begilden uns dem Heind, und der Nächten wird verschwinden mit dem Feind. Nur heut versammeln wird die Sonne in dem Kajor. Wie ein Parol so gehen das Lied von dort zu dort. Nur heut versammeln wird die Sonne in dem Kajor.
wie a Parol so gehen, das Lied von Dor zu Dor.
Das Lied geschrieben ist mit Blut und nicht mit Blei. Es ist nicht ein Liedl von a Vogel läuft er frei. Das hat a Volk zwischen fallen dicker Wind. Das Lied gesingen mit Naganes in die Hand. Das hat a Volk zwischen fallen dicker Wind. Das Lied gesungen mit Naganes in die Hand. Sag nicht keinmal, als du gehst den letzten Weg. Verschimmeln Bleien, verstellen bläue Tag. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Schau. So wird ab heute in unser Trott mir sein.
Oh, Canada, terre de nos aïeux, ton front et saint, de fleurs glorious. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God, keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Kolod baleva penimam nefesh Yehudi homiya ufate mizrach kadima ayin letzion Sophia od la'ad tikvateinu hatikva bat shnot alpayim liyotam chofshi be'artzeinu Eretz Zion Yerushalayim liyotam chofshi be'artzeinu Eretz Zion Yerushalayim.
This concludes the
Be a minyan
commemoration.
for Mariv downstairs in 5 minutes.